Hello, everybody. Welcome to Comedy Film Nerds, episode 275.
International episode.
International episode, halfway to 550.
Nice. We're going to do something special for 300?
Yeah, I think 300...
Isn't it going to be close to the festival?
No. 300 is going to be close to when Star Wars is released.
Ah, that's
so
right.
So I think this is not for sure, but we've been talking to Steele Saunders. If we can fly to Australia, so we're the first ones to see the new Star Wars movie, and then do the Steel Wars Film Nerds mashup episode, that would be... I looked at the calendar. That would be episode 300.
Wow.
We got to make that happen.
All right. Done.
We're lunatics, so we're going to go do that. We flew to Australia.
We've done crazy things before.
Yeah, we flew to the Outback to interview one guy.
Yeah.
So we can do this. Well, this is a first. We have a new-time guest, and our first time having a Swedish guest, ladies and gentlemen, from the Filip and Fredrik podcast, Filip Hammar.
Hello. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for doing this.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm very excited. It's the second podcast I'm on, or third maybe. I don't know. I was on Adam Carolla once.
Oh, nice.
And then I was on Getting Dog with High.
Yes.
But I don't think that was a real success because people thought
it didn't take.
Well, people thought we were a little lame, I think. You know, we weren't really used to, I mean, he has a following of people who really lives for the marijuana thing. And for us, it was more like coming on a show. And we're not really, I mean, I have nothing against pot at all, but it just hasn't, I'm not from that culture. You know, we're in Sweden, we drink instead. So it was a little, it was a weird experience. And we had to take some shit from people, but I didn't. Someone told me afterwards, like, don't check out the comments or whatever on YouTube. Just don't. And so I did. You know, I didn't. I didn't mind. I didn't really mind. But it's even the Swedes who are his followers and his part of his sect. They were also disappointed. So all in all,
they were angry you weren't high enough.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been high so many times on television because I do television as well in Sweden. So it wasn't really a challenge for me to be high. It wasn't like, oh, I need to do this because it's important.
It's not like a pole vault.
No, exactly. I did because I did a TV show last year where me and my friend, I kind of tricked him into eating a magic cookie. Fredrik, my co-host, I do all shows with Fredrik, and we got so high at a silent retreat up in Napa Valley, and I thought that was a better way of getting high on air than being on his show. But it was fun, and I get it. But now I'm prepared for the next time if he ever invites me that I should do it differently.
Do a little meth, maybe.
Yeah. Exactly. That would be more interesting.
You got to raise the stakes.
Exactly. But we were actually talking about that you could probably stretch it a little bit if you went somewhere where it's legal. I don't know where it is, but...
Well, tell us a little bit about your show.
Well,
your podcast.
Yeah, well, we have a podcast called the Filip and Fredrik Podcast, and it's been in English for a little bit more than a year now. First, we did 3 years, I believe, in Swedish, and we loved it. But after a while, we realized that. So, should we just continue doing this forever, or should we change it and make it more accessible for the rest of the world? So we did that.
Now, your last episode in Swedish was the footage you gave us that we're trying to see if we can figure it out, a place where to put it for the documentary, but tell everybody.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, we ended you were talking about where you're going to do your 300 podcast. We did our the 200 podcast, which was our last podcast in Swedish. We did it in the biggest indoor venue in Sweden. So we actually had 17,000 people showing up for that.
For a podcast.
For a podcast, yeah.
A live podcast.
So that was historical. I heard you last week, I think it was last week, you talked about Mark Maron and how historic it was that Obama came on the show. But for a live podcast, I think this was pretty historic because... it was weird. You know, we were just sitting there in the middle of this huge arena and talking like this. We just had a table, and we threw in some kind of action, but not much. I came in,
and it was in the round too. So the audience was all around.
Yeah,
right?
They were. But what happened? The first minutes. Fredrik, my co-host, entered. and he was singing a Metallica song because we actually beat their old record in terms of how many people showed up. And then I came in. I was dragged in, and we had built this contain looked like an American pill container or whatever you call it, because I've been talking a lot on my podcast that I do take a lot of pills for anxiety. Let's not dwell on that now. But I came in hidden in that container. So that was as far as we came to some kind of.
So that was like a giant visual
action.
Inside joke.
Yeah, that was and that's what I love about podcasts, and I think you touched upon this beforehand in your podcast as well, that I love the idea of having 17,000 more or less friends showing up.
Yeah.
So we really didn't bother to make it broader. It was more or less just the references were only to the stuff we've talked about in the podcast, and it really worked. And that's, it feels.
No one showed up for that show by accident.
No, exactly, and that's what I loved about it. So we ended up with me hanging in the ceiling, and I was when we were singing an R. Kelly song that we've been talking about a lot, and it was fun because everything. But it was weird.
That's like that's a dream to do that.
Yeah, it was, and yeah, everyone took pictures of me, and yeah, it was a dream, but it wasn't a dream in the beginning because we were sitting down, we started talking, and then people started screaming, "We can't hear you! We can't hear you!" And we had kind of underestimated the concept of actually doing a podcast in such a big arena that it's really hard. Music always works, but it's tough when you want people to actually hear what
because
you
when
say.
stadiums were built, they didn't think this would be great for a live podcast.
No, they will have
two guys.
They will have to build podcast stadiums in the future, that are specifically made for this purpose. So that was scary, but since we're best friends, and we're always doing stuff together, so we kind of figured out a way, and we managed somehow to pull it off. And that was a great experience. But after that, we decided, hey, now it's over. Let's do it in English. And it's an enormous task, obviously, and a huge challenge. Because some of the Swedish people, they hate it, so they've dropped off. And
then how do you get the Americans to come?
Exactly. How do you?
Because they don't know you.
No, they don't. They have no idea. So it's only word of mouth. That's really how you can't really buy ads or trying to any other way to sell it. On this show, obviously, it's good for me to introduce myself. And hopefully this will be a better show than the getting Dog with High experience.
Our fans aren't dicks.
Yeah. I don't know if they're dicks, his fans. It's just that it's they expected something else. No, so it's tough.
Some of them are dicks. I've been on this podcast before, and I get it's the only podcast.
You're not going to let that point go.
No fucking way. I'm a recurring guy on a lot of podcasts. There is only one where people. And a lot of his fans listen to this show, and those people are like, "Oh, I love when Graham's on Doug Loves Movies." I've never done Getting Doug with High because I'm not a stoner, but
neither am I. That was the problem. That was.
I think, but then I've had so many of those fans like, "Oh, Graham sucks. He ruined it." Shut. But suck it and shut it.
He would probably.
You ruined a podcast. Is that even possible?
It's the idiots who think that his movie podcast, like those games, are for the Olympics. Like it fucking matters. No, it's about joking and making movie records.
But he would do a good religious leaders, I think. His followers are really following him.
To get back to your reference of letting people know, you could, I don't know, just maybe take an ad out on Sunset Boulevard and buy a building.
Exactly. We have been talking about that. And now me and Frederick, I'm sad that he's not here, but he's in Sweden. That we love doing the podcast. I don't know. It's kind of vain to think that, people all over the world would discover your podcast, because there are so many right now. But it's still a dream, just to get some kind of following in the US, because the stuff we made in the past in our careers, which is television and then podcast and stuff, it's oftentimes based, and it comes from American pop culture and the US. So for us, it would be, such an achievement to have only a few people that
I think
loving us like they love Doug Benson. Like a few asshole friends, fans. But
I think and that's why what we're talking about for anybody listening is you guys are going to do your podcast at the LA Podfest this year.
Yeah, we're incredibly excited excited about this.
I think it's going to be a really cool opportunity for.
And if you can't get to it, if you're listening in Sweden, there will be a live stream.
A live video stream, so you'll be able to watch it. So.
Yeah, the fans we have left, maybe they will listen. No, but it's really that's an exciting thing for us, and we're very humble when it comes to doing this in the U.S. because also it's not my first language, so sometimes you're really looking for the words, but gradually we're getting better at it, and
that's got to be tough for comedy.
It is,
because comedy is so much about sarcasm and slang,
and based in culture too.
And, yeah, all these cultural references and whatever intentionally butchering a word.
Yeah,
but totally, and that's why sometimes we really feel that we suck at it, but then occasionally we feel that actually we can benefit maybe from trying to find words. We work harder at it, and the way we express ourselves. But it's a tough thing, and who knows when we will give up. But I don't feel like it right now and it's also our podcast is I think we see more of like themed podcasts, and I think that's going to happen more and more. That for every fucking hobby in the world, there will be a podcast, which is great. And our podcast is only about ourselves,
which technically is a hobby.
It is. It is to me as a narcissist. That's me. Hey, that's the only hobby I have. But it's also that's weird because we never know where we're going to end up in. Last week's episode, we ended up talking about. Tom Waits and Ryan Seacrest, and we compared their assholes because we said they should both be on display at the Smithsonian in Washington D.C. because everything Ryan Seacrest does is so clean and so well thought of. He's so elaborate in all the choices he makes. So he has a clean asshole, and then we got Tom Waits, who's this creative lunatic who we love, and that probably reflects on how well you wipe your ass, and who knew that would be the theme for one podcast, and that's tough, So we're.
Well, that's the billboard you should buy outside of the Sofitel Hotel. Those two guys assholes.
Exactly. So we were fantasized about that actually becoming a real item and an installation at the Smithsonian, and we talked about calling Ryan Seacrest's people and asking if he would be interested in donating his asshole.
You could make it
once he's done.
Display. Yeah.
But I don't know. We might buy one of those. Whatever. I don't know what kind of spaces there are outside the Sofitel.
Well, the Sofitel is right off.
Maybe Beverly Center, just the entire Beverly Center.
It's right off of La Cienega Boulevard.
Who should I contact? Do you know who sells those ads?
Here's what you do.
That's what.
Drive up La Cienega.
It has a number on them.
Is it? Yeah, and you'll see at the bottom of the billboard it'll say blah 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 corporation, and they'll have
that's how you do. Because we really feel like having the big one on Sunset and like San Vicente or whatever.
Do that one.
Yeah,
that's one of the best you can have. Usually like big ass TV
LA
shows.
Podfest, September 18th.
Exactly.
That's prime billboard real estate.
I need to talk to them tomorrow. I need to drive on my way back. I will actually get the number.
Because I know
someone needs to sponsor me as well. I don't know how expensive that
is. Because I know you want to leave. You came in a little early.
So let's get into some movies.
Yeah, I'm on my way to watch actually it's soccer. It's the under 21 final in the Euro. So incredibly boring to you guys. But Sweden is actually so caught up in this, and so am I. And as an expat, we gather the whole group.
It just sounds very European to me.
It is really Europe. I shouldn't probably talk about that because then I'll get all these hate comments. We don't fucking care about your soccer. Let's talk about baseball. I don't know anything about it.
So we want to talk. What do we want to start with? Let's
talk about I saw the Nina Simone documentary.
Okay.
So it's called "What Happened, Miss Simone," and Netflix produced it.
How many documentaries are Netflix producing right now?
It's so funny because
1 out of 10 is good, right?
Well, they're doing a lot. Well, obviously, what Netflix realized years ago when these license deals they lost all this content because Sony or whoever said Stars just took all their content. Pulled it. They're like, oh shit. So they just said, we're going to create as much content as we can. We'll still license the TV shows and the big movies, but we need to create our own content. So they have
best thing that ever happened to Netflix. obviously.
To documentaries.
Well,
Yeah.
to everything, to comedians.
I actually have to tell you guys that I have a documentary out in Sweden now that we produced, and we did the entire documentary with two other people, me and Frederick, called Nice People, and it's a documentary about and that's just interesting talking about. Once again, I start talking about myself. That's me. I need
That's your hobby.
Yeah, that's my hobby. So I need to. No, but it's weird how documentaries in general are attracting bigger crowds for real, even at the movies.
Well,
because
I think too, it's a cheap way to get content too in a
because the budget on documentaries is a couple $100,000, maybe $500,000.
Well, the other thing
at the
too
most.
is a lot of these documentaries are probably almost done, and they need completion fees. And part of the distribution deals is like we'll pay to finish the movie, and then we'll premiere it on Netflix.
Well, the other thing too is before like Netflix, the only way to see a documentary is you hoped it came to your little independent art house theater in your town,
and then it was there for a few days.
It was there for 5 days, and then it split, and then you had to kind of.
And probably most people do not live in a city where they even have an art house, movie theater. So it's really.
So now you get to do this. So this movie and Netflix, because they produce this film, they put it front and center when you log into Netflix now. That's the thing that they're
Because
pushing.
they want to obviously make money on their own stuff.
Sure.
So,
And they want people that
It's recommended for you according to your choices and likes.
I could.
But I watch, but it's true though. I watch a lot of documentaries, so of course they're gonna. And I've done documentaries
For you, it makes sense, but it probably shows up for everyone.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we made a documentary about a group of Somali refugees in Sweden who forms their own national team in bandy, and you don't even know what bandy is, but it's like ice hockey but with a small ball on a field that's as big as a football field. And it's a sport that's huge in Northern Europe and in Russia. So we traveled with these guys to Siberia to compete in the World Cup. They lost all their matches by 20-0 or something like that.
It sounds like you just made that entire thing up.
Wow, we didn't. No, that's why we were so attracted to the project in the beginning.
This is
and Nice People, and now it's the most watched Swedish film at the movie theaters in Sweden this year. So we're a small country, but still,
and you produced and directed this?
Yeah, and we're also in it.
Let's finish with what happened to Miss Simone.
Well, let's not talk more about that movie.
I just wanted to. Then we'll get into.
Well, let's do the Miss Simone and maybe forget about my movie.
No, we want to talk about it. We just want to do it.
It doesn't have an international
We just want to do it in order.
We'll do it one at a time.
I love that you should. We're very sorry. I won't come here and try to take over your structure of the show.
It'd be better if you were...
Miss Simone, was that a good movie?
Yeah. It'd be better if you were high.
Exactly. Maybe I am.
Well, you just took snuff, which is so great. So it was directed by Liz Garbus, who has done, she did the Bobby Fischer documentary. Liz Garbus.
I love that documentary. Should we talk about the Bobby Fischer documentary?
We can talk a little bit about that.
But that was such a great documentary, and just finding these... he was the perfect person for a documentary, and
because he disappeared.
I just knew fragments of his life, and then when you get that's what great documentaries can do. They kind of put together a much fuller picture of the person.
And that's what this did.
Well, now, with What Happened Miss Simone, what did it focus on specifically?
You constantly want to come back every time.
I'm trying to keep it on track. I'm trying to keep it on track.
Okay.
Well, because it's interesting you make the Bobby Fischer comparison because he sort of disappeared. Nina Simone did that. She stopped performing for about 8 years. And
when was this?
This was she. Starting about 63, 64 became huge, and from 63...
Where's she from?
She's from the South. She's from North Carolina. So, and she started, and of course her original name was like Eunice Wayman or something like that, and then she was performing in Atlantic City, didn't want her mom to know about it, so she came up with the name Nina Simone. So it's cool stuff like that. I only knew her from soundtracks in the 90s. She was on a lot of soundtracks in the 90s, and I bought this album, The Essential Nina Simone, and I thought she had this amazing voice. She did a cover of Here Comes the Sun, the Beatles song, that is just like haunting and beautiful and is amazing. I was like, wow, she's awesome. So I didn't know much about her. This goes into so much. She was heavy into the civil rights movement.
Wasn't she heavy into drugs as well for a while?
She got into that. Well, what happened was...
Heroin and stuff, right?
I don't know that it was... They didn't go into the heroin. If she did...
I might be wrong here.
I don't think that she did. I know that she might have. Everyone was a little bit back then doing that kind of stuff. But one of the things they didn't realize was that she was like manic depressive bipolar. They didn't even know what that was until much later in her life. She stopped performing she was like, wasn't like the Dr. King civil rights. She was the like Stokely Carmichael, like get a gun and fuck this. And so, and you're seeing all this footage.
She's more militant.
Far more militant. And then I think after Dr. King got assassinated, she kind of, and then, you know, it was like whatever that 60, it was like Dr. King, Malcolm X, you know, Bobby Kennedy, like everyone just got gunned down and all of these Langston, everybody was dying and she was just like, and split and didn't perform until like
because she was so
angry.
Depressed by everything that happened.
Angry, everything. And she had this very volatile marriage. The great thing about this documentary, her daughter is one of the executive producers, so her daughter gave the director access to all of this amazing interviews you've never seen before.
Archival
footage, great concert footage, like amazing stuff, like 16-millimeter concert footage, TV show appearances, and all of these like recorded radio interviews that they used very wisely, sort of almost like Nina Simone's voiceover to tell the narrative of her life. Is really
when did she come back after those?
Yeah, she came back in the 70s, and then she was in.
Then America was a different place, right?
Yeah,
because when she had her breakthrough, you had the whole racism and all that movement, and then in the 70s it was a different country.
It was a totally different country. She lived in I think Liberia for a long time, and then she lived in Europe. And then you hear a lot of interview stuff with her daughter. Her daughter is talking about, she's like, both my parents were crazy. They would fight. My mom would stir up the fight. Her dad was violent. Nina Simone was
Who was her husband?
He was this guy who was a former cop who then was her manager. And he managed.
That's always bad news. Former cops who are managers. That's not a good idea.
But I don't want to like spoil.
But you liked the movie.
It's an absolutely really well. Because
it's not an easy transition to make though. Cop to manager.
Yeah, that's why it's the worst.
I think more.
Was Ike Turner also a cop turned manager?
Yeah, it was definitely. Detective Turner.
He had that aura, cop to manager aura.
Now, cop to publicist, a little easier.
Yeah, but still, it's a bad aura. You know that it's dangerous. Everything cop to is usually bad. Cop to yoga instructor, even that is bad. You never know.
Stretch out, pussy. Like,
it's never good.
But it's an interesting film. It's a really captivating story. Her interview footage is captivating, and hearing her daughter, and then like her daughter, they played with Malcolm X's kids, you know, and then hearing Malcolm X's kids talk about it's fascinating. And then interviews with like some of her band guys that played in her band. It's a well-made documentary. Mm-hmm. She has a completely interesting life.
When did she die?
She died in 2003.
And she performed until the end? Or?
Yeah, she did. She was performing. She had this renaissance in the late 70s through the 80s, and she sort of built her career back up. And the other thing they got a hold of, and this is only through her daughter, I would imagine, journals.
Oh, wow.
And they're showing like stuff she was writing. I hate being on the road, and my husband. Just like wow.
She really seems like she really.
That could have been any performer's journal.
Right. Wow. Like one of her. Yeah. Exactly.
But she really. It seems like she really deserves
the food's
this documentary,
terrible.
though, because for a while, to me, she has become just a soundtrack at hipster coffee places in New York, and you don't know that much about or hipster coffee places in general all over the world, and people. They're probably not familiar with her story. Really.
That's a great point, and I think that's why this is an important documentary, because I was one of those people just like, oh yeah, I heard her music, this is cool. She was the high priestess of soul. And knowing all this is like.
It's what guys turn, when they come home and they want to get laid, they put on some Nina Simone. Yeah. That's what she's been reduced to. It's so depressing. Hey, I'm I've got some depth to my personality.
Yeah.
I love Nina Simone.
What kind of panties do you have?
I'm going to go home and watch this movie probably tonight. I'm excited about that.
So another documentary that you said you watched, though, was Red Army.
Exactly. I think, I watched Red Army.
Did you want to talk about a little bit more about Nice People first?
Well, my documentary, it will probably have an international release later on this fall, but it's interesting because it's a movie about integration, really. It's we call it an integration comedy, and there hasn't been that many integration comedies throughout the years.
And you directed it, right?
Well, yeah, it was actually directed by two of my friends, Karen and Anders, but it was made, the four of us kind of made it. I'm in it with Frederick. So, but it's more, what's interesting is what's going on in Sweden. I won't maybe dwell on this too long because I think people will be bored by talking about Europe. But
we have some European listeners.
Yeah.
No, but there's a right wing movement in Europe now, and it's bad times in a sense where I would say integration is one of the biggest problems in Europe and elsewhere in the world maybe, but immigrants coming, and in Sweden, we in our history is that we've been very, very open to accepting a lot of immigrants, but suddenly we have a Swedish Democrats, a right-wing party that want to stop immigration basically, and that has changed, and they got like 14% in the last election, and that's a real change. We wanted to make this movie. To maybe create something great out of it by showing it's not a political movie whatsoever. But the problem with the immigrants and whatever you call them, the original Swedes, is people rarely meet,
Right.
So instead you get scared and people start bad mouthing each other. So this movie was about an integration project where Swedes and Somalis met. And it was just an endearing experience to be part of.
What was the name of the sport?
It's called bandy.
Bandy.
It's a small sport, but it's big in this corner of the world. And I mean, Russia is not a corner; it's like 50% of the world, really. So that's where it took place in Siberia, and it was just interesting because you hear a lot about Russians not being welcoming to foreigners, and especially people from Africa and stuff. But it was just the warmest experience I've ever been through.
And you traveled with this whole.
And we traveled with them
Wow.
both to Africa and to Russia. So it's a complete feel good movie about it has those like Cool Runnings elements to it, obviously, but it really happened with this national team, and now it's going to be. We've already shown that we showed it for the Prime Minister in the government.
Really?
And now we're hopefully traveling to New York to show it in the UN. So it's a movie that has made some marks, I think, because it's a different approach to the big questions of our time, like immigrants and integration and having people. And I think to me as a I don't know if I could call myself a comedian, but maybe and comedian / journalist / something. I don't know, but it's. I've realized how powerful it is to use comedy and to use just the entertainment to get people's attention. And that's what this movie did, We're not really talking about politics in it, but it's just a way of showing that, hey, I think we could get along pretty well in this country with all these different people from all over the world, that it's actually just, we're benefiting from it.
And I think too, like comedy and like healthy athletics, not like crazy win at all costs, but like, it reminds me of a documentary that I've spoken of before, the Afghan Star, which is the singing,
competition,
the Idol, American Idol
in Afghanistan, and how it helped unify that country a little bit. And obviously, there's right wing that's fighting it, and the Taliban doesn't want women to sing or whatever.
Right.
But it's also, I remember being in Iraq.
Oh yeah, you've been there many times. I read about that.
Yeah, and I was there when the Iraq soccer team was competing in the Asia Cup, and they advanced a little bit, and the whole country now.
And it stops being about politics, right? It's more
you're not a Shiite, you're not a Kurd, you're not a Sunni, you're an Iraqi rooting for your team,
right?
And that is.
Well, South Africa did it too with soccer.
Exactly, and rugby.
Yeah,
it was right. Well,
and it's so sad when you see how it's like France. They won
Matt Damon.
That's the rugby film.
Oh, the rugby film with Morgan Freeman, of course, as Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Who else? Who else could possibly?
And Jamie Foxx.
Yeah. No, but it's really sports and entertainment could. I don't know. It might sound shallow, but I think it sometimes can unite the world and really make people think in different ways. And this movie did the job, and we're incredibly proud of it. So
I think that's great. And so when do you think this might have any sort of wide release?
Well, this fall, hopefully. Okay. So maybe at the Podfest we'll be able to say, we're actually working on an international version, just replacing some of the Swedish songs with some Coldplay songs instead.
And
Make it broader.
and adding-
maybe throwing in Morgan Freeman as a voiceover. Just broaden it up.
Adding some subtitles.
Exactly. That's a good idea. No, but I was talking about. I also watched a documentary. Maybe this is the documentary episode of your podcast. But I was watching this documentary called Red Army, and it's about the Soviet Union hockey team in the 80s, basically. The team that lost to the U.S., and we all know that there was a documentary about that as well. That was great. What was it, Miracle on Ice, or what was it called?
Well, yeah, Miracle. That was the Kurt Russell. That was
Kurt Russell, but then there was a documentary as well. But so this is really it's a movie about the Soviet team, and it's just so great because it really. It's also a movie about that era, about communism and how how sports was used as propaganda and as something to prove their supremacy in many ways. Like, look at this works. When we beat the U.S. by 10-0, that also proves that communism is working, which is such a weird fucking way of looking at things, obviously. But it was interesting, and how late those Russian stars, especially there was something called the Russian Five, I believe, the Super Five, which was, it was Kasatonov and Fetisov, the defenders, and then it was Makarov, Krutov, and Larionov, who were the offensive line. And they, how late they arrived at the NHL and how hard they have to fight to be able to actually make $1 from their sport, and how Fetisov was, charged in Russia, and how he or in the Soviet at that point, and he was threatened to be thrown in jail or sent to Siberia to just. These guys had invested everything. They didn't meet anyone. They worked out 355 days per year. They were locked in like a prison, and people only saw them once they were competing in the World Cup. So after they lost in 1980. There was like a decision on an official level, like, hey, we need to be better than anyone else all the time. Otherwise, it looks bad for our country. So the movie is really, I'm a fan of sports documentaries in general. I love those. The 30 for 30, I watched all of those, and this one is a little more ambitious, obviously, because it's been, it was released on theaters as well. And I love
a 30 for 30 about this.
Exactly, and I love that one as well, because the perspective, they've changed the perspective from the 1980 Olympics, that instead of having the U.S. perspective,
it's the Russian
perspective.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
And nobody realized how, even if the U.S. team would have lost, they wouldn't have been punished.
No.
But nobody really knew what was at stake for these guys from that part of the world.
The interesting thing, and I'm sure they probably touched on it in Red Army, but in the 30 for 30, you're hearing the family members, like the wife of one of the coaches or whatever, saying, I was in that arena in Lake Placid and I thought they were going to kill us. Because these Americans were like, get the puck out of Afghanistan, and everyone was like foaming at
exactly. All of that happened. That's why it was so powerful that win. Jimmy Carter called them and and said, "Congratulations, guys." Yeah, and I honestly feel for. Obviously, communism was a shitty era in history, but.
Thank God we don't have any of that now.
Yeah. There are no bad things. Nothing bad is going on. No, but you feel, those guys were really victims, and you really feel for them. There's one passage in the movie where one of the guys said, if I ever, the new coach, there was this coach called Tarasov, who I want to read so much more about.
He was this, the grandfather of
hockey,
of
right?
Russian hockey.
Yeah. And
he's like, we're going to play different than the Canadians.
Exactly. And he was inspired by the Bolshoi ballet, and he was inspired by chess. He played chess with the Karpov, one of the best chess players. He was like a creative genius but then the KGB realized that no, we can't have him. He's too open and too much of a.
We need a soldier.
And too much of a great guy. Exactly. We need a soldier. So they picked this new guy called Tishonov who stepped in. And he created it was torture, and
they didn't like him.
They hated him, but they didn't dare to say anything because then they would probably get killed or something.
He was the guy that pulled the goalie in the the gold medal game. The best goalie in the world wasn't playing well, and he pulled
exactly. In the 80, was he the coach in the 80? Yeah, he was. That's true. Yeah.
And there's that great line in the Kurt Russell movie.
Tretiak.
Yeah,
he pulled Tretiak.
Where Kurt Russell goes, "Hey guys, the best goalie in the world is on the bench," and then just go, and then they light up the third period or whatever.
And they said there's a passage in the movie where a guy says, if I ever need a heart surgery and I need a new heart, I'd love to have Tishonov's heart because he's never used it. And it's such a great line, and it completely kind of captures who he was. And it's I cried watching this movie, and you realize it's a great, it's so much more than hockey. It's about how widens your perspective on, especially sports. I remember when I saw the North Korean team was it the Olympics, soccer Olympics, and they lost and they cried, and rumors, I don't know if it's true, that they were sent to, confrontation camps or whatever when they got back home. So it's really, because for closed dictatorships and stuff like that, it's great to have good sports. It's a way of bragging, saying it's good.
Well, it's what we're talking about, like this is the opposite, like we're just talking about nice people, how sports
can unify it.
But when used incorrectly,
and really, it's more than just about the sport,
right? Yeah. It's about unifying people, when you can use it for the wrong reasons, like we're going to use this to control people and to jam our ideology down people's throats and stuff like that.
As a propaganda machine.
Yeah, I don't know if this show is about also plugging movies, right? The movies, and I really think people should watch this movie because it's really one of the
Red Army. Okay.
And it's people should watch it.
One of the things I also wanted to talk about too, while we're talking about Swedish movies, is I'm a huge Ingmar Bergman fan. And
are you really?
I am.
But what does that mean? Because a lot of people, they love to say that they're Ingmar Bergman fans, and then you start asking them about movies. Which is your favorite movie?
Seventh Seal.
Okay, well, that's the blockbuster from his from his catalog. To me, I haven't been watching that much Bergman, but he's one of those also filmmakers that they made some. I think there will soon be like a real huge Bergman documentary. There are several already.
I really think when you look at his movies, even through like Winterlight and Through a Glass Darkly, where it's all about philosophy and how
you're losing me here. I haven't watched that many, so that's the problem.
One of the characters thinks God is a giant spider out to get her. Like these weird crazy things.
He was really that. I have to say that how impressive how he really was. Early in so many ways, and how he pushed the envelope.
You see his influence on later Swedish films. Like if you look at his movies, and then you look at everything from Let the Right One In and Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, you see the bleakness and the philosophy of like a lot of his movies in these later movies, and it's always connected to the weather. And it's always like you see like a bleak, like Winterlight is a great example of where it's such a slow, dark, depressing movie, but it's all framed around like it's a winter in like a small town.
I think people
and you always have those shots of like a landscape, but you see it in Let the Right One In, you see it in Girl with the Dragon, you see these.
Let the Right One In that's a good movie. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is a bad movie.
Yeah,
but it's
so why do you not like those? Because we were talking about this. Because I actually is.
Well, we can all agree that Let the Right One In is a masterpiece. I truly think it's a masterpiece, and
it's a great movie.
And the look of the movie and all of that.
Well, it takes
with this guy, the cinematographer. Hoyte van Hoytem, I believe.
It takes that Bergman bleakness. And then,
but it elevates it. I think it
brings it into a different genre. That's
exactly
what's so fascinating.
And Thomas Alfredson, who directed it afterwards, he did this movie, the John le Carré movie. What was it called now? Oh fuck! Do we need to check that up, or we can edit it out?
Which one? The Tinker Tailor.
Tinker Tailor, and he sort of brought that feel into that movie, but it still felt incredibly British in a sense. But I think I find it very interesting what you're saying, because as a Swede, I hardly reflect on the Swedish look of a movie, because I was brought up looking at movies that looked like this, though even our kids shows on television looked like that. They were also bleak. Everything has been bleak, and it's part of us being, growing up in a country, especially for me growing up in the 80s, we're still having that constant threat from the Soviet Union. In a way, Sweden was also a very, it was completely run by the government. I mean, it was truly a democracy in every sense, but it
was an easy metaphor to
But we
make.
only had 2 networks, 2 TV channels until the early 90s. We only had 2, so everything was...
Well, winter and nuclear winter were a very easy metaphor to make.
Exactly. So I think that's why I'm not... Probably I'm not so fond of it, really. I loved when there was some sun coming into Swedish movies eventually down the line. And when they go back and try to benefit from the nuclear...
To be clear, I've never seen sun in a Swedish film.
No, but that's true. I just said that, and I'm thinking, like, which Swedish movie has sun in it? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't exist.
Maybe you need to make that movie.
Yeah,
my
exactly.
friend.
Well, it was quite some sun in Nice People. Actually.
But you were in Siberia.
Exactly. That's why I'm drawn to those places. I cannot. Yeah.
You should do a scripted movie called Sunshine in Sweden and talk all about this.
But it's weird because I'm making my first movie now. That's not a documentary, a real movie. So me and Frederick are directing a movie, our own, actually, a novel we wrote, and it takes place in my hometown. And there's gonna be no sun. I realize that now. It's crazy. It takes place in the 80s during this era.
Do you need me to be like the one suntanned California?
Exactly. Because it takes place in my hometown, which was once on television, on Swedish national television. It was chosen as being the most boring place in Sweden, and it deals about that. So it's probably true, but it's also, as I wanted to point out, it's fascinating because when I read reviews of Swedish movies in U.S. press, they love to bring that up, the whole idea of how bleak it is, how dark it is, where, as something great, and they all give it to Bergman, which might be true, but there's also different levels of it. Some people are masters at it, at doing that. Bergman obviously was. But some movies are just shitty, and they can get away by not having any sun in the movie. And especially like with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I couldn't really get why they were referring to Bergman they're always referring to Bergman when they review books as well, because there's this crime novel wonder going on in Sweden now. We've got the Steve Larsson books, obviously. Or in the Nordic countries in general.
Did you read the books?
Oh, yeah, and I loved those books because they were page-turners like
I got to agree.
Nothing I've ever experienced.
I really enjoyed the books. I didn't love these movies, and I didn't necessarily love the American ones. I thought they were okay.
Yeah,
they didn't
but it was
bother
not
me,
Fincher class. I was disappointed with David Fincher just doing something.
But what was interesting, too, is if you've read the books, you realize book 2 and book 3 is like one story. Like, how can you even make, separate movies?
And now they're making a new book with a different author, which is weird.
Really?
So the fourth book, he passed away at the age of 40 or something. Right. This guy was a very prominent Swede in terms of fighting neo-Nazism and stuff like that. And, he had a magazine called Expo, and they were only dealing with the dark forces in our society, talking about Nazism and just in general.
Well,
that stuff. So that's what he did. And then in his spare time, he wrote these books. So he never slept. That's the rumor, at least. And then one day when he was climbing up the stairs to his office, he just collapsed and died. And then I think he had mentioned to someone before, like, I have 3 books. And they will be a success. He knew that.
And if you read the books too, they're not just like novels thrown together. They're these amazingly like nuanced, and also just this entire world that he creates. I mean, there's storylines and characters that will never
like
be in the
action movie as well. It's so weird.
It's one of those books where it is one of the more engrossing set of books I've ever read in terms of I could not... like when you're binge watching a cool show on Netflix and you're like, I can't wait to get home to watch a couple more episodes.
Right.
I was like that with this book.
Exactly.
I have to get back into that world.
I need to go to the restrooms again. And
But literally, no, I remember could I drive there? No, I'm going to take the bus because I knew I'd have a 40-minute bus ride.
So you could get a couple more chapters.
Oh, man.
And I love that about the books. And some reason they really didn't manage to capture it in the movies. Sometimes I guess the books are just too good, you know, and my expectations were, especially when the Fincher movies came out.
Especially when they're so nuanced like that. I mean, those books, and one thing that's fascinating too about, I mean, you could make the comparison with those books and Bergman. I can kind of see why people make some of these comparisons now, is because of the rich characters. You have these nuanced characters that appear one way, their eyes say something different than what they're actually saying, and you actually have a fully fleshed out person. And those books were full of that. Like every single character that came into that book.
And also a female hero, which was part of the success. I thought that was great, how this Lisbeth Salander, this goth girl, smart goth girl, how she... I mean, he somewhere said, I don't know if that's true, that he based this character on Pippi Longstocking, which is a famous Swedish children's
hilarious.
book. And she was also a female hero in a sense. And all Swedish kids grew up with Pippi Longstocking, with a female hero, you know. So to me, it's kind of logical that he looked at her.
See, that would be a pitch in Hollywood. Imagine Pippi Longstocking, but as a hacker.
But that's true. I think that's how he described it, or Pippi Longstocking as a grown-up. That's.
Well, let me ask you this: How were the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movies? First the Swedish ones and then the Fincher ones. How were they? I mean, how were they overall received in Sweden?
I think they were okay received, but there was this movement with these books. They kind of shook the entire country in a sense. The books, you know, everyone was reading them, you know, everyone. And then
it was like Harry Potter.
It was, and then there was this mystery about this guy as well. He wasn't around when the books were released.
And there was like a fight for the rights a little bit.
Well, between the brothers who suddenly the richest farmers in the world, they say now. Two guys. I think he has. I'm not sure, but he has a couple of brothers, I believe, up in northern part of Sweden. And I guess they hardly knew that he was writing the books. And then he dies, and they say, well, it's all up to you guys. You own these rights. And at the same time, he had a girlfriend that he had been living with for ages, I guess. So that created some kind of fight between his his girlfriend and the family.
For ownership of the rights?
I don't know. I don't know but I know that now those brothers have donated a lot of money to his foundation with the magazine he had. So I don't know what happened, but it was all. I mean, everything in Sweden was about these books. So when the movies came, I think expectations were so high that it was impossible to please people.
Right.
In a sense, you know, that's on a level where, you know, as a small country like Sweden with 9 million inhabitants, I mean, it's fewer than in LA.
And they weren't the easiest books to adapt. If you read those books, you're like, how am I going to...
There's a lot of things going on.
There's a lot of characters that, you know, it's slower paced. And like I said, the second and third books are like one story. Like, you know,
the third book is a little heavier, I remember, because it mostly takes place during a trial, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying that the books, I think, were something for Swedes to gather around, to be proud of, you know, something that made an international mark, because that's important for us. You know, as a small country, you know, suddenly these, you know, we consume so much stuff from the U.S., from elsewhere in the world. Yeah. So when we actually have something that's, you know, exporting that, wow, everyone is getting this.
Well, you're going to have nice people soon, too.
Well, yeah, it's not going to be that successful, but it's real. I mean, but since then, I mean, people have sold, so many Swedish authors have sold their rights now to Hollywood.
I'm sure.
In terms of crime, there was this series called Backstrom that was out this year. I think it was canceled. That was based on Swedish crime novels. And you got the Norwegian guy Joe Nesbø, who's huge as well. Obviously, we're not the same countries, but it's the same corner of the world. And I mean, Sweden has become the place for crime novels. Well, really.
I want to talk too, just real briefly, because I was able to see this recently again, is Ingmar Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful...
It's unbelievable. It's so good. If you ever want like an anti-Hollywood look at how characters are created and nuanced characters, check this out. Now, The interesting thing is it's a mini series in Sweden. That's originally how it was shot.
It's all actually I can recommend people. It's all on YouTube for free. You can just go on YouTube and you find scenes from Marriage.
It's like 5 hours long.
Yeah.
I think
you should
it's like
binge
6
watch
episodes.
it.
Yeah.
You really should.
And
then you're so depressed afterwards. That's the thing.
It's very
You want a
true.
divorce. Afterwards, it's like you walk home and you divorce.
I watched like I watched like the first 3 and I'm like, oh my God. But
when do you find time? You're a dad, right?
Yeah.
So when do you binge watch it at night?
Late at night
That's
or
fucking dangerous. You get so depressed.
Yeah. Or kids are in school. Like I go to movies at
That's better when there's some sun. You need some sun.
Like it's like my 10, 11 a.m. on
Don't
Friday.
watch Bergman during the winter.
Yeah. Don't definitely.
Let's have a party. Let's watch scenes from a marriage.
And then we'll finish it with Winter Light about nuclear annihilation in the winter. So what I found fascinating about it is that how great it was directed, how great the characters were nuanced about, and basically
acting
it's
is
literally
so brilliant.
It's literally
so brilliant.
It's 2 people talking most of the time.
Liv Ullmann and Erland Josephson.
Yeah.
Those were his actors.
His
really.
his go-to people. Yeah. And I'm watching this, and I know there's like I think there's like a 2-hour movie version that was released here.
I think so.
But I would recommend see the way it was meant to be seen.
But it's interesting that you bring this up because as I mentioned before, since I've been talking a lot about myself in this podcast.
Yes.
I also
hobby.
I also do exactly, and my job. Because I do TV shows in Sweden, and last year I filmed a TV show. It's our original idea, but it's kind of. We're inspired by scenes of a marriage. We probably didn't achieve, we probably didn't reach that level. But anyways, we call the show, should we call it Quits? And it's basically me and Frederick, who are 2 comedians. Instead of bringing in like Dr. Phil or Dr. whatever they call it, Luke, or there are so many doctors. It's just us 2 comedians spending a week with a couple who's about to break up. And it's an incredibly... It was a primetime show in Sweden, but it's fairly dark, and we usually do way sunnier stuff. Mm-hmm. It has been the expression of this podcast, but it was so. And now we're trying to sell this format in the U.S. And when I have meetings with people, they said, "Well, we should probably, we should have to change it a little bit and turn it into some. It can't be this depressing. We need to throw in some new elements of sorts, and it needs to end on a positive note." And I'm like saying, "No, let's try this once and for all. Shouldn't one American network just try to show something that is real? Because all reality television for years now, it's just bullshit, as you said."
Oh my God, he knows the secret.
But you want exactly the big secret. But still, some people don't. I think that's the problem, or people just don't want to be exposed to the truth. But I still think that would work, and it's so because we really in this series. It's the same thing as you said. It's basically 2 people just talking, and then me and Frederick, my co-host, just really subtly try to walk in and maybe, do you think maybe?
Now, do you guys help try to break them up or keep them together?
Well, both. Both, I guess. But we didn't give any advice. It was more like we met this couple where he played video games all day long. He was unemployed, so he just played video games from morning till night instead of helping out with the kids and stuff. And we said maybe it's a good idea if you just get rid of those video games. So we actually forced him to throw it in the river where he lived. But that's usually we didn't come with any advice because it's so hard. But it was just a show about that I think appealed to people because they could relate, and it's so rare that you actually just let it be like it is. And that's why I love Scenes from a Marriage, that and that's our show was real, but this feels real, even though it's fiction.
Right.
And I mean, if you're into that kind of stuff, I think people should really watch it because it's incredibly, I think it's part of the Swedish heritage as well, or the Swedish entertainment heritage.
Right.
Dark and bleak and depressing
and well nuanced with characters.
But that's that's the thing, that it's well nuanced. But it's a great it's legendary.
You get a lot of nuance when there's no sun.
Probably you do.
The sun shines away the nuance.
Man, it's warm in here.
Yeah.
Or is it just me?
No, it's
the
not you.
valley's hot. We can't turn the air conditioner on during the show because
the valley is way hotter
than Sweden.
And then Hollywood, right? As well.
Or the world.
Yeah, it's pretty hot
That's
here.
why I live at the beach.
But we're almost done.
We're almost done. We'll get you out of here.
Oh well, no worries. I'm thinking I might need to.
You got to get some air conditioning, and you got the
Exactly. I'm not pleased with this.
You'll feel better.
Have you seen my once I show up at the Podfest? You need to be well air conditioned.
So let's talk about DVDs and Blu-rays coming out. Get Hard.
So you're also this formal. I love this that you're actually talking.
Oh yeah. We have an actual.
So Get
format.
Hard is coming out. What is that?
That is the.
Doesn't matter.
The.
It's a comedy.
It's the Will
Not that
Ferrell.
good.
The Will Ferrell and.
Kevin Hart.
And Kevin Hart. Yeah. And I
That's a bad
honestly.
movie, right?
It had to have been.
Well, let me put it this
I
way.
didn't see it.
I don't know anyone
Will
who's
Ferrell,
seen it.
married to Swede.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we should. That's not so interesting. But he spends all his summers in Sweden.
Oh,
so
I
I'll
didn't know
occasionally
that.
see him at my local cafe.
Oh nice.
Oh.
Yeah, that makes me proud.
Well,
as
Did you
well.
ask him why he keeps making the same movies?
I will. I will. Yeah, that's sad, right? He should,
then report
he
back.
should make something
You're a millionaire.
depressing. He should do something depressing.
Yes. Go to Sweden. Make us
Scenes
a
from a Marriage with Will Ferrell would be great.
You know what? I would actually watch that.
Of
I think it would be really good.
This is a good. We just actually. That's a new idea. We should all
I'm
do
in.
it together.
I'm in. The Gunman. What's this movie?
This is the Sean Penn movie where he's trying to be Liam Neeson.
Oh God.
And
Like.
While We're Young, this is this one I've heard mixed things about. This is the
Is it Ben Stiller movie?
the Ben Stiller
But that
movie,
movie's
yeah.
supposed to be good, right?
I haven't heard mixed. I've
Okay.
heard some people have liked it, some people
But this
haven't.
guy Noah the director is the guy who also made. He's made a lot of movies that are great, by the way.
Is this Lie Down with Dogs?
No, this is Noah Baumbach.
No.
Yeah, what
Okay,
did he do? One of his movies is really a masterpiece.
He did
with the one with Jeff Daniels.
Yeah, he did Francis Ha. He did The Squid and the Whale.
Squid and the Whale.
Yeah, Squid and the Whale.
yeah.
Great movie, well
Oh,
nuanced.
Kicking and Screaming. That's the one I was thinking. Okay.
Then we got Danny Collins. What's that?
Danny Collins is the Al Pacino movie that Kevin Pollak hated. That was
Also looked bad. Right? Why is he also making?
I don't know. Why?
Making shitty movies.
Like-
couldn't someone just give
Here's the thing.
Will Ferrell or Al Pacino a great script?
Here's the thing I don't understand. You're Will Ferrell. You've got millions of dollars. You can't go find some young writer or old writer or just a good writer of any age, of any ethnicity, of any background and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you 100, 200 grand. Write me a fucking script about this, whatever, some gritty,
Or-
that's all I would do.
But they have bad
Open and-
advisors.
open and
So
off.
they commit to too many things too early, and then there's
But they get
lawsuits.
agented too. They agent like, oh, you got to do this, and they don't read
They should
or
just
whatever.
say, like, he should say, for 2 years now, I'm only reading scripts, and I'm finding something I like. I can do it. I'm not
It's
committing to-
doable. Matthew McConaughey did it.
well, what a lot
You think
of
he
them
has
do,
enough money, Will Ferrell, or does he have an
For
expensive
sure.
lifestyle?
No, Will Ferrell, he can do whatever he
Well,
wants.
some of them, though, that's what happens. They get this, they got the $20 million mansion.
Their overhead is so.
Yeah, so they got
It's like
it.
Mike Tyson, you get white tigers
Will
and stuff,
Ferrell,
and then it's
yeah.
over. You know, that's
you
the
know,
problem.
he's an owner in Funny or Die. He's doing okay.
He's doing okay.
What I think happens is
White tigers.
the smarter.
You know, that's the problem. Once,
Yeah.
it's
Once you're buying
the
white
cop
tigers,
turns
yeah.
manager, or when you get the warning signs, or when you get a white tiger.
Well,
You buy a weird animal.
the way
if you ever see me with a white tiger, just stop me.
you'll know that
Shut up, you really need it.
it's like, and if you're in the sun with a white tiger,
That's
you know
true.
it's over.
It's over.
Go back to the darkness. Go back to your boring town.
Maybe blend all of this together,
Yeah.
like a comedy
Yeah,
with Will Ferrell and white, sunny comedy with white tigers, and Al Pacino in a supporting role.
Yeah, he plays the cop turned manager.
Exactly.
You're going on tour.
Here we
Because
go.
I think what happens is the smarter actors, like you said, they take control of their careers, and all it is you have an office, you hire an executive that you like, and make them actually read scripts, and then what you become is basically stealth producers. You're the one shopping the script that you want to do with
Right.
yourself attached, and that's
Yeah.
a lot of times how they actually get to do the projects they want to do. But
And don't you think if they went to a place like, I don't know, Netflix and said, hey, I want to do that, and Netflix would go, done.
yeah,
Because what he's missing, Will Ferrell, is an Oscar. I mean, I think he should be
Right?
That's what he should be aiming for. You know, he has that talent to win an Oscar, and if he,
I think
like
so.
the Foxcatcher move by Steve
Oh, yeah,
Carell,
Steve
which
Carell.
was a smart move. And that was probably he wasn't paid that much for that
he
movie.
was
probably.
so creepy in that movie.
Yeah.
He was
Right.
great in it.
Yeah, it's such a great movie and such a great performance, and I'm pretty sure Will Ferrell could do something like that
Yeah,
as well.
I think so
But
too.
he has to take charge
Instead of
Right.
just coming on Jimmy Fallon and do impersonations and stuff, it's so boring now.
with a white tiger. That's his white tiger.
Yeah.
Jimmy Fallon. If you're doing Jimmy Fallon then you're doing it. That's
You
got
got to get that white tiger off your comedy
You got to
back.
stop writing that white tiger down.
He doesn't seem to be that white tiger compatible, though, Will Ferrell. I mean, I would be very surprised if I came to his house and there was a white tiger.
So I guess we have our hashtag for this week. Hashtag white tiger.
Hashtag white tiger. He's got to have a version of his white tiger, though, whatever that is. All right. So what we're saying, guys, don't get any of these DVDs. Just go back to Netflix and watch Red Army and What Happened, Nina Simone.
Yeah, I think you'll be
Do that.
You'll be in good shape. Also, for the site spotlight, the Amazon link is now working. You guys have been saying that like your ad blocker's been blocking. You haven't been able to buy any Amazon stuff through our affiliate. You should be able to now. And in the message boards, there's one of our fans, Scrugulus, has been putting up some great links to some articles about like sound design and some really cool stuff. If you want to just learn more about the tech side of the business, there's some cool links to articles that
Thank
he's
you,
been putting up
Scrugulus.
in the message boards.
Let's just hope.
That's your crazy fans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scrugulus won't like my performance. He's the guy that get that sweet off the show now.
Well, I think I'm just worried that Scrugulus is going to buy a white tiger. Then the message boards are just
They're going to go nuts.
They're going to go to shit.
Yeah.
He's just gonna,
I think you can get white tigers in Ohio and stuff. That's where you get.
It'll just be
Texas.
pictures of white
There
tigers.
is a great documentary, by the way, about exotic animals in the U.S. called Elephant in the Living Room. It was released a couple of years ago. It's such an amazing documentary. I love it.
I'm actually going to write that down. That does sound fun.
It sort of revolves around this cop in Ohio who travels to people who owns lions and stuff, and like older guys.
And becomes a manager?
No, well,
He takes the lions on the road.
no, the opposite. Actually, he tells them like you cannot have this lion because it's really terrible how they treat their lions.
Right.
Because they get them as cubs and then they grow big and then suddenly
Right.
they don't dare to do anything with them. They just throw in some chickens or whatever they eat. And
So they keep them like in a backyard that they never go into or something?
Yeah.
yeah, so
And
they
then you hear about
it's
him.
so sad. It's such
Oh
a
my
sad
God.
movie,
Yeah.
but I think it's almost an Oscar-worthy documentary. Elephant in the Living Room. There's another tip from me that
Nice.
people should.
Great.
Scrugulus, or what was his name?
Yeah, that's it.
He should watch it. It's great.
And premiering this week, two very different films. Terminator Genesis.
I can't decide. Here's what I think. When I look at Terminator Genesis, part of me goes, "This is going to be dumb," and then
It's gonna be done.
it's going to be dumb, and then I think, but I don't know. I said that about Mad Max, and I really loved it.
There's
but,
another guy who should, but he has just filmed another movie, right? Schwarzenegger. He should do something touching.
he
instead.
did actually,
and he did, right?
Yeah, he did this movie about his daughter. We talked about it. That indie film.
Hollywood
Maggie,
would love.
yeah.
Hollywood would love to nominate him for an Oscar.
And it's a low budget, basically a zombie movie he
Yeah.
did with.
well, now I'm disappointed.
Well, here's the
Scenes from a Marriage with Arnold Schwarzenegger wouldn't be bad either.
Oh, that'd be awesome. So here's why I'm worried.
I'm feeling unfulfilled.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Absolutely should be concerned. This director, now the director of this new, Alan Taylor's directing the new Terminator movie. He did Thor: The Dark World. Okay, and then he did Game of Thrones, and he's done a lot of TV, which can be good or bad. I don't.
All we know is that he's going to do really well at the box office.
It's gonna, I think it's, you've
I'm
got,
not excited to see it. I just can't.
There's so much weird, and
They haven't
next
really-
week premiering as well. Magic Mike.
Honestly, after Terminator 2, hasn't been like an amazing Terminator movie. Like
Terminator was great.
How many has there been since Terminator 2?
5.
there's
I
been
didn't
at
know
least
that.
one or two more.
I stopped watching by Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And then because every time they just kind of redo, like they try to throw some new element into it, just never kind of works. Like, you're not going to have that Mad Max like magic that happened with this
People
last
are
movie.
obsessed with the Mad Max movie.
But that's
It's amazing.
it's really unusual. It's very unusual
Right.
to actually have. And the other thing too is
My friends in Sweden are binge watching it at the movie theater. They just watch, three showings
really?
In a row.
It's amazing.
Wow.
Because you also have the original guy who did this.
Yeah, this
remake,
Australian
this
guy.
reboot
Yeah, George
slash-
Miller. Yeah.
He's super old, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
in the
70.
70s, yeah. Like we were talking about before, what 70-year-old has those images in his head? To make that movie.
This guy.
And you, what was
He's
cool is
the
it was
one
like,
guy that could have a
yeah,
white tiger.
Yeah, it really.
And we would all accept
And
it.
then
Yeah,
like,
fair enough.
Yeah.
For him, it makes sense. To have him. Have him have
It's
a white
almost
tiger,
like,
yeah.
where is it? Why
Yeah.
doesn't he have a white tiger?
And he would have it on set, and no one would think that would be weird.
No, just logical.
Yeah.
Just, where's George's white
Yeah.
tiger? Can we?
So, and it was like a weird mix of like, was it a sequel? Was it a reboot? Was it like, there was like
And
these,
this looks like more of that nonsense.
And but he made it work. It was like you didn't care. Was it did it exactly follow? Did it exactly follow the timeline? Was it a reboot? And it was like a mix of all those things together, and that's what made it really.
And
cool.
I think though everything you just said, what I thought you were talking about was everything since Terminator 2 had all of those questions, but they just weren't done correctly.
Everything since Terminator 2 led up to the new Mad Max movie.
I'm gonna make one suggestion, which would make a really cool Terminator movie. Is there was a Frank Miller comic book series, a limited series that came out.
You shouldn't just drop this stuff. You should just try to sell it yourself.
It was a RoboCop versus Terminator, and it was a crossover, and it was awesome. It was really good. It was a RoboCop versus, and it mixed the two worlds beautifully. And how basically Murphy had to fight Terminators, but he was also responsible for helping to create them, because when he was created, it also helped launch.
Also dark, no sun.
There was no sun. No sun. But it was a great and it would make a great movie. It would be like it's like that Freddy versus Jason versus.
It's probably going to be made.
If it's in development right now, that one I would actually go see. So I don't know. Terminator Genesis, I'm like you on it, Graham. I'm like, I don't know. I'm skeptical. So Neil already has his midnight tickets, so he'll be going to see it. You'll be getting a review very shortly. Magic Mike XXL.
This movie, I'll tell you what. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's got to do very well. That's all we can say.
There's no artifice to this film. It's like, here's what it is. Enjoy it.
So like all the women that go to the New Kids on the Block concerts that I was at, like they're just like, they know.
I feel like I'm running out of steam. I can't talk about Magic Mike. It's impossible for me. I don't know. It's just a movie. I have no comments.
It's not for us.
My suggestion is go on YouTube and watch Scenes from a Marriage instead. That's better invested time. You'll grow as a person. There's no way you're growing as a person by watching Magic Mike.
No, you're just stuff in your spank bank. That's
I
all
gotta
Magic
agree.
Mike's.
I gotta agree 100% with Philip on this one. Yes. But if you're gonna go see Magic Mike, enjoy, have fun. I'm sure you will.
It should just be called Spank Bank the Musical.
Yeah.
That's all this should be called. Just call it what it is. It's PG-13 porn.
Yes.
All right, that's our episode.
That is.
Well, thanks a lot for having me. That was great.
Hey, thanks. Where can people find you on the internet, online?
Well, it's on, we have a webpage called podff.com. That's where, that's our home in a sense. You'll also find our podcast, the Filip and Fredrik podcast. Filip is spelled F-I-L-I-P. I think I need to do some international version of my name here, or at least the spelling. The Filip and Fredrik podcast. You can find it on iTunes and everywhere else. And I would be happy if people just gave it a shot.
Start listening, and then you're also on Instagram.
I am, yeah, and that's Lars Filip Hammar. That's a complicated thing, but I'm on Twitter, PodFF.
Okay, we're gonna take a photo and tag you on Instagram so people can start following you, and then of course you can listen to these guys.
And everyone can see how sweaty we are.
Yeah, exactly. Are we really taking pictures after this?
And then see these guys and 34 other shows and 5 or 6 panels at the Los Angeles Podcast Festival.
We want to be on a panel as well. Can we be on a panel?
If you want to be,
sounds exciting.
I'll put you on a panel for free.
Yeah, we'll be on a panel as well.
About why the sunshine.
It's sort of a
wrong.
dream for me, you know. I mean, be on an American panel. Good, great.
I can make that happen.
Oh, great! I'm so happy.
One of the things I wanted to mention too is not only are we going to have Philip and Fredrik, the podcast, but we also just signed Stuff You Should Know. They're coming out from Atlanta. It's going to be another great show for them.
Guys, we're going to be updating the website. Many of you have asked schedule who's going to be on it. We're going to start putting the shows on LAPodfest.com. We have a big announcement coming up in the next week. That's going to be very cool.
Obama is going to come.
Oh God, I wish that'd be great. Now we got Joe Biden. Yeah. Joe Biden's doing the stand-up night.
Yep.
He's closing it. We've got some great stuff like Dave Anthony's podcast, The Dollop. Patton Oswalt's going to be their guest. Greg Barrett, who, as we know, many might not know, he's been battling cancer right now. So they're going to do a walk in the room reunion show at Podfest.
Yes.
And so it's going to be an awesome festival. Probably the biggest one we've done thus far. Mm-hmm. So check that out, lapodfest.com. And of course, follow us if you haven't, go to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's all at Comedy Film Nerds on all of them.
And also the iTunes Comedy Film Nerds store is active. You can check it out. A lot of cool movie recommendations that you can rent, like some cool indie films that you may not be aware of. And that is at itunes.com/CFN.
That's episode 275. Put it in the books. Thank you, Filip Hammar. My name is Graham Elwood.
And I'm Chris Mancini. Oh, God, I just ruined it. And I'm Chris Mancini. And as always, remember, Han shot first.
We're not editing.
No, bleakly.
Bye.